Welcome in this first video of a new series on the WebDataGrid and its DB variant, the TWebDBDataGrid for TMS WEB Core. It's all about managing tabular data in web client applications, and so let's get started with giving you an overview of the options you have as a TMS WEB Core developer creating web client applications to display, edit and perform operations on tabular data in a web client application, and where the WebDataGrid and the DB WebDataGrid fits in this picture. Options you have available as a Delphi developer is first of all the TWebStringGrid, TWebDBGrid, part of TMS WEB Core framework, also the WebTableControl and its DB variant, the WebDBTableControl. We also offer the FNC Data Grid, integrated in FNC UI pack, but also usable from a TMS WEB Core client application. And finally, the subject of this series, of course, the TWebDataGrid and its DB counterpart, the TWebDBDataGrid. First of all, the WebStringGrid and the WebDBGrid. What is their role and their position in the WEB Core framework? Well, these grid components are modeled after their VCL counterparts and therefore have a nearly identical interface as well as feature set. And this WebStringGrid, WebDBGrid are rendered in your web application through HTML and CSS. Next in the list of grid options you have is the WebTableControl and the WebDBTableControl, and this is a Pascal wrapper class around HTML tables. So as you know, tables typically in a web application are rendered through the HTML table element with the TR and the TD elements below this table element, and this allows for automatic and also responsive HTML rendered tables in your pages. And we have added paging and filtering capabilities as well to this WebTableControl and its DB version. As this is built up with HTML table, TR and TD elements, these are fully CSS stylable, including also that there is support for taking advantage of popular CSS libraries such as Bootstrap or Tailwind. FNC Data Grid is the next on the list of possible options for showing or handling tabular data in web applications. The FNC Data Grid is part of the FNC UI pack, and this data grid is not only usable in native VCL or FMX applications, you can also use it in your web core web client applications. It's extremely feature rich and also extremely performant, and you can take advantage of that. Among its features are filtering, sorting, paging, grouping, master detail, various editor types, various cell types, grids in grids, and so on. It is fully rendered through the HTML canvas element to have a nearly identical look and feel as you have in a native VCL or FireMonkey application. It's highly stylable through numerous properties to control fonts, colors, and so on. But the appearance control is based on these properties and not on CSS per se. And then the last one, subject of this series, is the WebDataGrid and the WebDBDataGrid, which is a feature-rich and performant Delphi wrapper class around the mid-licensed AG-Grid. And AG-Grid is a very popular, highly used JavaScript grid library for web client applications. It has a huge feature set, and that includes filtering, sorting, paging, various editor types, and so on. It is fully rendered through HTML and CSS, and it means it also has not only built-in styles, but you can also customize the style with CSS libraries. And so, as in the purpose of this first episode in this video series, let's have a look with a couple of demos at these 4 different types of grids that are available for your WebCore web client applications. So here we are in our familiar Delphi IDE, where I have prepared a list of demos showing each of the different grid types you have available for TMS WEB Core. First one is a TWebDBGrid. This is the component on the form, and as explained, this is modeled after the VCL DB grid, meaning that we also have a columns property, and via the columns property you can control the different characteristics of the columns in your grid. The grid is connected to a data source. The data source property is assigned to the web data source on the form, and this data source in turn is connected to a data set, the web client data set in this case, that retrieves its data via the web client connection from this specific URL in this case. So this is a static file in this case, and if we inspect the data that is behind this static JSON file, you can see it is a JSON array with all these elements containing information for records in the DB grid. What you can also see here is that there is a picture field, and that picture field is a name of a picture, and that picture will also be displayed in the grid, and displaying this image is achieved by in the picture column, of course, for the picture field in the data set. And when we look at the onGetText implementation for this field, you can see here that an URL is created based on the image name, because that image will be available on the web server and accessible through an URL. That is how it is implemented in this demo. When I run this demo, this is the result in the browser. So you can see the DB navigator, and the active record is behaving exactly the same way as it would be with a DB grid in a VCL application. You have the various fields. You have also the URL field that becomes a clickable hyperlink here in this grid, and a Boolean field that is represented by a checkbox. And here you can see the rendering of these images. As explained with the onGetText, we feed the URL for this image in this particular picture column. So that was the DB grid. Let's move to the next example, which is the table control. That's the table control dropped on the form, and this table control is also loaded here in this case from the same JSON file. Let's have a look when we run this demo. That is how it is shown in the web browser. And you can see that now all the column sizes, for example, have automatically adapted to the size of text in these different columns. And you can also see that in this case here, it's a non-paged web table control. That means simply all the records are rendered, and the size of the table just adapts to the number of records. So everything has been flowing with HTML as is. We've also implemented filtering. So for example, as I'm typing, it automatically performs the filtering on these rows. So that about the table control. Next one I have in my list is the FNC Data Grid, and here you have this data grid, and in this example it is not connected to a data set, but it is programmatically filled with data, and that is here the code that performs the initialization of the grid And you can see here that it adds different rows, that it not only adds different rows, but also add subgrids to grid cells, for example. Better to see directly the result of this, and this is the FNC Data Grid rendered in the browser. You can see when I collapse everything that we have these collapsible rows, and you can see here that there is a grid in a grid cell, so subgrids, grouping, and also master detail are all among the capabilities of this FNC Data Grid. And as well checkboxes to select. It will offer filtering, combo boxes to edit, so all these kind of capabilities are available for you in the FNC Data Grid. And then let's move to the subject of this series, the WebDataGrid. And here is a simple first step or introduction to the WebDataGrid. If we inspect the code, you can see that we clear all the column definitions of this WebDataGrid, and then we add 4 columns. We specify some data for these 4 columns, so the name of each column and also the data type for this column. We also add a column that offers row selection through checkboxes, with this checkbox selection added on the last column in our data grid, and then we fill some sample data programmatically here in this data grid, and we also offer a multi-row selection, for example. There is not much more than this in this simple demo. When I run it, this is the result. You already see the bounding that is available out of the box. So if I inspect the bounding property, you can see here it's enabled, bounding color is set, and you see the result in my web application. And so I can perform editing, select multiple rows, etc. And I can also do filtering or enable the filter capability in the WebDataGrid. And from here I can start my filter operation. For example, if I only want to see names with starting with the J, then I simply add this filter, and the filtering is instantly applied to this data grid. You can see it's nicely built up here, all based on HTML and CSS. And the last example that I wanted to show you in this introduction is the DB variant of this data grid. And so here we have again our web client dataset that is connected to the data source property of our WebDBDataGrid. We have columns that are set up here in the column definitions, and so we see here that it offers or shows us 3 columns. The last one is without a data field, but that is for the row selection or record selection in the grid, so not connected to a data field. And we also have to the same web data source a navigator connected, so you can see how it behaves like the typical expected dataset DB aware controls in a VCL application, but here of course fully as a web implementation, a web client application. So we have here our data grid, and you can see that when I use the navigator to walk through this data set, it nicely synchronizes. I can also perform editing, so when I double click, editing starts, but also when I put my data set in edit mode, you can see here that it changed to editing. And what I can also do here is use filtering. So when I apply filtering, you can see that the filtering capabilities becomes available here, and as I type, you see that the filtering immediately kicks in. And also a feature like sorting is automatically built in. And you can see that if I click sorting, it sorts now in ascending order, now in descending order, and then the next click returns it back to the regular order of the records in the data set. And with that, I introduced in this first video of the WebDataGrid video series an overview of the options you have as a TMS WEB Core developer to show, handle tabular data in a web application. In the next episodes, we are going to have a look in more detail at the various features, possibilities of the WebDataGrid and the WebDBDataGrid, and to show you how you can get the maximum out of it in your WEB Core application. It's available in TMS WEB Core. Feel free, if you have not yet, to download a trial version of TMS WEB Core and start playing, experimenting and exploring the capabilities of the WebDataGrid. If you like this video, give us a like below here. And if you want to be informed about the next episodes that we have planned for you, don't forget to subscribe below, then you will automatically be notified in this YouTube channel about next videos coming up. Thanks for your time and attention. Until the next episode.